Welcome back to News in Focus. Now, earlier today, communities within Stilfontein have been banding together to try and assist some of the illegal miners that have been trapped underground. Now, this comes after yesterday, the Minister in the Presidency, Kombutsa Ntshavheni, said that government will not be sending any help to those miners that were trapped. She said that scores of Zama-Zamas that were trapped inside the abandoned shaft in the northwest are without any food or water. And she said that, quote unquote, they must be smoked out and prosecuted. The discussion now comes with regards to regulations and whether there really is any goodwill from government or the various other stakeholders to try and make sure that some of these abandoned mines are either completely shut or some sort of economic activity is occurring there, but done so in the right manner. Joining us now, I'd like to welcome Peter Major, who's a mining expert, to break down this conversation. Mr. Major, always a pleasure having you on. You're on News in Focus on Hilaal TV. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Faraz, but you can replace expert with veteran.
Okay, there we go. I think let's do that then. So, mining veteran, Mr. Peter Major. Mr. Major, we had a pre-discussion earlier this morning. Both you and I are scratching our head, asking, it's easy for government to say, well, they're on their own. But this is the same government that really hasn't put their foot down in trying to enforce any supposed regulations on abandoned mines.
You're very correct. This government, well, until it was the GNU government, we had 30 years of an ANC government. And they have to take responsibility for this because before they were even in power, Mr. Ramaphosa and Mr. Montage were the two lead players. They were head of the NUM, the largest mining union on the continent. They are the ones that set the agenda for what we have now. In 1987, the end of that year, we had the gold miners' strike. 550,000 men worked on the gold mines alone. And at the end of that strike, 3 weeks, it was messy, it was bloody. By early 1988, the mining houses and the banks and the citizens and government of South Africa realized the union is controlling the mines. We no longer control the mines. So Cyril and Gwede, it was up to them, where do we go from here? And unfortunately, they had the wrong rhetoric. They had the wrong idea. They didn't understand mining from a corporate and an operational point of view, but they had the momentum. They were populist. They said what sounded cute, and they had the men behind them. Now let's fast forward to 1994. Nelson Mandela, he'd been out 4 years. He realized nationalization does not benefit anybody, that we have many examples north of us on the whole continent. And he publicly stated, we will not nationalize the gold mines. We may alter some legislation, but the mines are here to benefit everybody. And they have benefited everybody. For 100 years, they have benefited everybody in South Africa, and they benefited investors who took the risk of bringing money here to develop them. And those were mainly overseas investors. But in 2004, radical legislation was implemented by the ANC, and that's where the real trouble started.
Mr. Major, 2 years ago, because we're having this conversation again, not with you, but I think from a public discourse itself, you have, of course, these illegal miners, these Zama-Zamas, committing rape in a mine in Krugersdorp or Roodepoort, I stand to be corrected, it's one of these areas. You then, of course, have government having some sort of imbizo with that community, and yet till today, nothing's really happening because these Zama-Zamas are still operating at that very same area. Where I live, in the East Rand, there's tons of Zama-Zamas that are operating, and I could sometimes hear from my residents gunshots between them and the police. This seems to be a battle that government either has no idea what they're doing, or number two, they don't really want to put the foot down quite harshly in dealing with this issue.
Here's the problem for us. Up until 1994, there were no incentives for Zama-Zamas. But from 94 to 2004, there were a few incentives that weren't there before, but there were a few disincentives for the traditional mining companies to put money into the ground. By 2004, with the government's MPRDA, they put down multiple incentives for Zama-Zamas, and they took away any incentive, and they put in huge disincentives for the mining companies. So from 2004, mining companies and investors had every reason for walking away from the assets, but the Zama-Zamas had every reason to come in. The Zama-Zamas now had hundreds of thousands of men, because our gold industry went from 550,000 to below 200,000 to on today 100,000. So you got 450,000 gold miners with nothing to do. The mines are closed, and yet syndicates are offering them money to go underground. So we have no incentives for foreigners. The MPRDA chased away every foreign investor by forcing, they nationalized the mines. They put in 30% BE, you got to give to some partner you don't know. 70% of your expense has to go to BEE. And the Zama-Zamas, they have none of those rules and regulations, but they have syndicates paying them money to go mine, and that's the only business they know. So that's the problem. Government has set up an environment that is very conducive to illegal mining, but is impossible for legitimate foreign-funded mining. And so how do the police deal with it? I feel sorry for the police. How do the communities deal with it? I feel sorry for them, because they can't fight all these regulations that encourage the Zama-Zamas and discourage legitimate companies from coming in and taking over.
Mr. Major, I know you've been critical of the Minister of Mineral Resources and Petroleum Energy, Gwede Mantashe. Of course, the portfolio has changed now, and one would understand within good reason, because everything has been knee-jerk in terms of the reaction from him and his department. Mr. Major, we're going to see another knee-jerk reaction from him, aren't we? Should, of course, this pass, what's happening in Stilfontein, and potentially another incident like this to occur.
I don't know what's going to happen. We've pleaded with them. Can you not undo some of the regulations? Because eventually they will undo them. Look at Zambia. They put in all these horrible regulations at the end of the 60s, early 70s. They killed the industry. They killed 90% of the industry. And 20 years later, 30 years later, 1998, 99, 2000, they threw out the old regime. They threw out all those bad regulations. And what happened? Tens of billions of dollars flowed in from international investors from 2000 on. And those tens of billions are still flowing into Zambia. The DRC did the same thing. Nationalized the mines in the late 60s. Sorry, they only nationalized in the late 70s, but they killed mining. 500,000 tons of copper, it's almost nothing 20 years later. But when the regime changed and they threw out all the old policies and brought in new policies, the DRC got tens of billions of dollars. We can do that in this country too. We get rid of that bad legislation, and we will get the foreign investment that will come clean up the mines, offer these men legitimate jobs, and everybody will make money. The receiver of revenue will get taxes. The community will get property taxes, good schools, good mines. It's changed in every country that got rid of the old regime and the old bad policies. So as soon as Gwede and Cyril realize that and just get rid of those bad policies, this can turn around quickly.
You know, they say, Mr. Major, it's difficult to teach an old dog new tricks. So it's going to be interesting to see how this does come about. Just one final question to end this conversation. You've still got this BHP potential takeover of Anglo still up in the air. A couple of weeks ago, there were reports that the Anglo bigwigs were in South Africa to try and make this happen. They're looking at what's currently happening right now. They're looking at potentially these abandoned mines, and they may be thinking, okay, is this what we're getting ourselves into when you look at legislation right now? This does not bode well for any foreign investor looking to invest in this country from a mining perspective when they see what's happening with the Zama-Zamas, when they see what's happening with regards to regulations, legislation. There is a head scratching right now thinking, oh, we just got to be careful right now what we're getting ourselves into.
I believe BHP is here mainly about their existing operations, and they don't have very many. It's the aluminum In fact, I don't even think it's aluminum anymore. It's the mineral sands. And I don't think BHP is going to make another offer for Anglos at this time. Those were pretty high offers they were making, and the people didn't take them. But if they go another 3, 4, 6 months, let's see what the environment looks like. I think Anglos has always had good assets, but it's at the right price. But no one is looking at investing in our gold mines because of these punitive, horrible regulations that drove everybody away in the first place. They are going to want to see the regulations changed, and then they're going to wait and see a couple investors who aren't as risk averse come in. They'll see how it goes. But gold out of all mining was always difficult, technically. It was always difficult financially. So I can't see we will ever have the investment we did over the last 80 years come into our gold mines. It'll be slow, gradual investment, and that's only if this government figures out how to make it attractive. There's a lot of ifs.
Yeah, but definitely a lot of ifs. Well, part of the ifs is going to be, of course, those miners trying to get out of Stilfontein. Mr. Major, always a pleasure having you on Hilaal TV. Much appreciated.
Thank you for us.
That's
Good job.
Peter Major, a mining veteran, talking to us about the real regulations and legislation when it comes to mines, because as long as there's a question mark with regards to this, illegal mining is going to continue, the communities are going to be affected, and there's going to be no sense of income or economic development within those areas. That's all we have for you on News in Focus. From myself, Ross Patel, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg, we say Jazakallah to you for staying with us. Stay beautiful, South Africa. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.